Kia ora, g'day, welcome back once again here with part 2 of my reaction to the HL podcast where he's got Mr. Chris Ryan and Ben Garwood on his show, on Mr. Hugh Keir's show. So let's jump back in.
And from a mental health aspect, it's absolutely fucking
I think
great.
it's also recognition as well. I think it's important that units recognition what those individuals gone through.
Yeah.
I think it's too easy just to say, right, here you've got 5 minutes on a cross brief, or you're not even on the cross brief, and which has happened to some lads, but what those lads, although they get the recognition of their own friends and their own guys in the patrol, what they're not doing is getting the official recognition from the unit as a whole that what's actually happened. And I think that is a massive thing to clear the air. And that's what people actually need there.
It was it was quite funny when I think about it. It wasn't funny at the time. The lads that were left from that patrol were all called up to the CO's office. And I got there first, and the boss, he said, in 5 minutes you're going into a room through there. He said, there's a doctor, psychologist, doc, and a psychiatrist. He said they want to make they want to set up here. He said you go in there and you tell them you're fine. I don't care if you're not. You just tell them you're fine. So I went, yeah. So I went in, sat down with them, and they've got this diagram on the wall, and it's a jug with water in for a normal person, half filled. For somebody who's stressed, it's full. So I'm sat, and he goes, "Do you have any nightmares?" I went, "No." First line. Are you seeing any images? Nope. Second line. Everything all right at home? Absolutely. Fourth line. And so on. And then he said, right, he said, what do you want to do? I want to go for a run because I'm on my lunch break. And he went, right, okay. I mean, I was barking, and so was all the other lads. But there wasn't even I think really what they should have done, like a sergeant major or a senior member of the regiment, balanced, somebody switched on, should have sat us down and said, fellas, what's going on? Because I went up to, I got posted to forward projection, and I was sat there with a lad from D Squadron, and he was the last guy out of the helicopter in the Falklands. And he said, Jody, do you have any nightmares? I'm like, no. He said, any problems or anything like that? I was like, no. Like, no, nothing. I said, why do you? He went, actually, he said, I was the last guy out of the helicopter. His legs were trapped under a guy's legs, and this lad pulled his legs out and pushed him, tapped him on, and this lad knew that a guy had died. He said, I cannot sleep in a room with the door closed. And he said, if I go to bed, sleep, and the missus comes to bed and she closes the door, he said, I wake up gasping from it. And he said, it's a real problem when I go to hotels. I can't leave a hotel door open. And he said, I have real problems. I was like, well, I said, to tell you the truth, mate, I said, I can't sleep in a room without the door being closed. And it was the opposite effect of his, and it was. I mean, in my house, I had locks on the bedroom doors. If I went to a hotel, I was dragging like drawers across, the door. And it's just, when I look back now, one of my hardest field interrogations was through 3-para, and it was.
Looks like he might have missed some stuff with the oops that showed up there, but I just wanted to. I had a few thoughts come to mind. Like, we don't do ourselves any favors, soldiers. And I would say, SAS soldiers no different, conventional soldiers, combat roles probably no different. I could imagine, and it's only really with hindsight, I think Chris said it's funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time, that when he was given the brief, 5 minutes time, you're going to go through that door, there's a psychologist, a psychiatrist, people that are going to ask you some questions, and you're going to tell them that you're fine. I think for me, if something like that had happened for me in the regiment and I was given a brief like that, I probably would have done the same. I likely would have gone in there and said, yeah, how are you? I'm fine. Everything good at home? Yeah, everything's great. I probably would have said the same thing. So that's what I mean by we don't do ourselves any favors. But we're very good at bottling things up, just males in general there, when I make that comment. But man, just hearing him talk about him and his mates, or the other guy that had the challenges that they were going through, not being able to sleep without the doors being opened, and him not being able to sleep unless the doors were closed. Stuff that must have been going on for them. And I think I heard Chris Ryan say he was barking at a couple of times, even during part one, which I assume he means barking mad, but just using the term barking for short. I could be wrong there, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, those that may be listening. But the fact that he can talk about it now and be as open about it now, and what he was feeling, where he was at, and instructions that he was given, no doubt him and others were given, you can't help but, I suppose, as you clock up a few more years and look back on things, and I'm looking at this from a different lens, obviously not having gone through what Chris Ryan's been through, but there seems to be a significant amount of reflection and understanding. Hopefully, I like to think he's come to, or finding a place of peace with regards to what he's been through, and able to move forward and work through that. And by him sharing it, no doubt, hopefully, I guess he feels like it could potentially help others. And I think that's the power and the benefit of hearing and listening to and learning from people like Chris Ryan, Ben Garwood, and Hugh Kerr, and many other people. So anyway, let's carry back on after the oops there that showed up. So I'll leave that in there so that we know what we're talking about, so you don't think I just cut out a whole bunch of this interview.
Up in Otterburn, and again, I'd be about 18 years old, and you had to get captured. Now, just off the ranges, there's a river that runs through one of the valleys called Blind Burn, and there's a section where it is about 12 foot deep. And being up north on the borders, it's always freezing cold. Well, these buckets got me, and they stripped me down, tied ropes around my wrist, and put me into the water until I was numb. And then they had a couple of airborne shelters with, the gas heaters in there. And they just bring you in, and the pain, as it comes through your fingers. I mean, they just sat watching me, and you doubled up. And then if you didn't say, anything other than, the magic fork, you were back in that water, which then took your breath away, and you're there then giving it this. I couldn't get away with it. I don't suppose you could get away with that shit now.
I had 2 para as my hunter force, and because I was ex-2 para, as the older guys were coming around, everyone was screwing up, trying to put food in my mouth. Got to a stage where I couldn't take on any more food, and I'm getting gobbed off at by the new crows who didn't know me. The older geezers are trying to square me away, and I'm going into these interviews, about to get smashed in these interviews, trying to swallow as much food as I can. Mega. But then, obviously, the whole time I just got accused of cheating or staying in the hotels. You can't win.
No. Back we used to, when I was on training wing as an instructor, we'd say to the guys, cheating's not a crime, it's getting caught.
Yeah.
And if you get caught, you're in the shit. So just don't get caught.
Well, that's interesting hearing Chris say that when he was in training wing, that they would say to the guys, cheating's not a crime or whatever. It's getting caught, so don't get caught. In NZ and Australia, I don't recall not once ever being told by any directing staff that it was okay to cheat as long as you didn't get caught. I think we all felt like I felt like I knew inherently, even though I was only young, that would be part of the job, to, try to get away with as much as you could, taking that you've got this hunter force and that looking for you, and the scenario being if you're deep behind enemy lines and you're trying to make your way, escape and evade out of that area to get to safety, you're going to have to take some pretty significant risks. And I think I felt like I knew that risk taking was part of the job, and that if I got caught, then I would suffer some consequences and likely wouldn't get through. But if I could get through using my wits, being calculated with the risks that I would take, that it would play to my advantage, and I feel like it did, myself and the guys that I was with anyway. So anyway,
I mean, I was with me and a lad from 2 Para, and we had 3 guys just doing combat survival with us. And I remember just before we were getting released, we got the old £5 note with Johnny, and I don't want to swallow that. And we got one of the guys, just at doing the course, to swallow it. And when it eventually came out, we went to this farm, knocked on the old door. Farm's wife comes in, is there shops in? She said, "Oh, exactly who you were. Get into the barn. My husband will be back shortly. She came in with tea and sandwiches. He comes back, comes in the barn. He said, "What do you want, Basil?" "I want to go to a shop." So he went, 2 minutes, I'll get the car. He comes out, he's got a shotgun, which he's loaded. We get in the back, gets into a village, go in, buy a load of Mars bars and everything else, take them out. And he's standing in the street waiting. I'm thinking, if the force comes down here, you let a couple of...
But what if he found you with a Johnny in your hand with £5 in front of his missus? I mean, how would that look?
Yeah, but no, everybody did it. It was funny because again, being switched on, we were caught in this copse, and the dog teams came up and they had this freaking Rottweiler, it looked like a Shetland pony, and me and Dick. Sorry.
You swear, but he crack on.
We're sitting there and we said to these lads, right, obviously we're a lot fitter than you guys. What we're going to do is we're going to break that way, distract the dog team. The dog will come after us. You run that way. So push yourselves right to the edge. And when we give you the thumbs up, you run. So we'll let that. They go, get on the edge, go. They start running. Stick them like that. Stay still.
Good bloke. Absolute Jack Donnie's.
I can remember seeing this thing bounding across and the scream from one of the guys that just pulled him down. Then me and my mate just, we leg it. It was good times, missed them.
What a stitch up, setting up their mates. But Chris Ryan is, I think he might be the first and maybe the only guy that I've heard of talk about in as much detail as what he's just spoken about there, about what they did and how they come across this homestead or farm, and these people help them. Hard case about the guy with the loading the shotgun, standing guard while they went to the shops and brought a whole load of Mars bars and things like that. Interesting. Most people that I know of to this day don't, we'll talk about it in general terms. You got to take risks, be willing to, do certain things. I might have even spoken about a piece when I was interviewed by my brother-in-law. Maybe I gave away a bit too much information during that time. I don't know. But hearing Chris Ryan talk about it, yeah, you have to be prepared to take risks. You are running low on energy, on calories, on all sorts of stuff. So you're, things moving around, they're looking like food to you for the most part. Or at least they were to me anyway, and some of the guys that I was on course with in NZ and Australia. But it's really nice to hear Chris talk about some of his experiences and what he went through. I don't know about that story about jacking out on your mates though, and telling them, coming up with this plan, saying we'll do one thing, and then just setting them up and just hiding while they get caught by the handlers, by the police and the dogs, and then they leg it and take off the other way. It's pretty ruthless. That
I got accused of. When was it? That was it. The interrogator was this quite an attractive woman, and she was going at me, proper beasting me, and she was saying, "Why have you got this weapon system?" And as we obviously were using rubber weapons at the time, "Why have you got this weapon?" I said, "Well, actually, it's this weapon, such and such." And why were you holding these radios? Why did you have all this kit on you? And I said, "Listen, I just got let down. I got let down by my unit. I got let down by my sub-unit. I've just been let down. Does no one ever let you down?" And when I like this, I had these like puppy dog eyes, and she looked at me, and then she went round the back, came back round and slapped me in the face. She said, "You little bastard, you nearly had me then, just for a moment." But then it's classic, because my chat lines have been so shit that I've never been able to keep the patter going for long enough anyway, so it's kind of run out of things to say.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the female interrogators were always good. They would catch people out. On my selection, 6 guys were all caught out by the female interrogator. All she was doing is, you knew exactly when you went in there that you're going to get stripped down, your dick's going to be about this big because it's freezing cold, and she's going to pull up, make out of it. She did it, and I mean, some of these lads have all been down south. They were big guys, launched themselves over the desk to try and throttle her. And that was like, nearly 4 months of hard training.
Really?
Gone. Yeah, straight off.
Losing the plot, going for it.
Yeah, totally.
Flipping heck.
And it was unprecedented that you had it. And when I was on training, whenever we lost...
Never heard of that happening in NZ or Australia, but you definitely get female interrogators, and yep, you're stripped butt naked and you get pulled the piss out of.
A student, it would be through a female interrogator pulling the mick out the size of your dick, and you're like, ah.
Well, I've had that all my life, so I was kind of used to it.
Interesting topic.
Yeah. When it's small anyway, you're not really too fussed about it.
Because the male-female dynamic is a fascinating one and a flipping unknown quantity, definitely, broadly speaking, in terms of battlefield stuff. Obviously, recently had first female to pass All Arms All Arms P Company.
Yeah.
Captain Rosie Wilde, congratulations.
Actually, I'm just going to share something here. Something about, I don't know how true it is, right? But it's one of those things that I considered before we went into the escape and evasion, and we knew that resistance to interrogation was going to happen after. But I'd heard a story, and I won't mention the person's name, but I'd heard a story from a mate about one of the guys that was on cycle, and he went through, did all the course and everything, and then when everybody gets caught and you go into the bag and you start the interviews, the interrogation process, all that sort of stuff, tactical questioning, TQ, whatever you want to call it, he had a pair of women's underwear on. So I don't know how true this is. It could be an old wives' tale. But anyway, he had that on, and when everybody gets stripped down, he got stripped down, and the reason that he did that, from what I've told, was to try to throw the interrogators off. And so when he was being interviewed and interrogated, the story goes when he came out, he shared that they just got fixated on the woman's underwear that he had on. And so all the questions and stuff that they were hammering about had nothing to do with, more tactical or strategic type stuff about the kit that he had, where he had come from, what he was doing, etc., etc. They focused in on why he's wearing women's underwear. Is he a cross-dresser? Is he, all these other things in and around that type of stuff, but nothing to do with actual tactics or strategy in regards to the work that they had just been doing, the agent RVs and the information that they'd been collecting and gathering and expected to retain, which you do have to retain because then you get asked about it at the end when the exercise is actually over. So yeah, that when I say I considered it, there were a couple of others because we got told the same story at the same time. I know there's a couple of us that considered that, but I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm not getting women's underwear and wearing that just in the hopes of they start to ask me questions that are just focused on that and got nothing to do with why we're there. So I don't know how true that is, but that's something that just popped into my head when these guys are talking about some of their experience, and Ben talking. That's a good one that he spoke about, just feeling let down. Have you never been let down? The woman going at the back, coming back and then slapping him in the face and telling him, you bloody nearly had me then. So, some of the guys, from what I've heard, have tried to game that part of the course and the training and stuff as well, as much as you can, to try to give them a bit of an advantage as much as possible. But yeah, hard case. That popped into my head, so I thought I'd share that.
And my daughter, actually, my youngest, said to me a couple of months back, why don't they allow women to go to war? I said, well, they do. No, they don't. No, they don't. Yeah, they do. No, they don't, Daddy. Trust me, they do. I serve with them on the front line. Medics, dog handlers. We brought a clerk. I remember in 2006 when I first, when I heard 4 Afghan tour kicked off. We brought a clerk on the ground who was this high, probably weighed 4 stone, pissed wet through, took on the ground. She said, yeah, I got the ground. She got on the ground for the crack. Talk about health and safety nightmare. Yeah. Put her on the ground, mate. And, but females in infantry units, what do we think about that?
It's
an issue?
Well, she's not going to be an infantry unit, is she? She's not going to be a paratrooper. That's not what. the Rosie, the girl who's just
No.
So she's
got
not
7-hour change.
But there is an administration issue, isn't there? Potentially. It depends on how culturally how open we are with having communal showers, toilets, and everything else like that. It depends. The problem often is the fact that we overcomplicate the situation by now going, well, we'll need extra toilets, we'll need extra showers, we'll need extra this bits and pieces. Well, if there's a role for her, certainly on jobs that I know I've been on where I've had female searchers, they've been on everything we've done. They've been right at the front there with us and done everything we need to do. We've never had a problem. We've never had a problem with the administration side of that. We didn't make it a problem. There was a requirement for these people to be on the ground. I think it comes down to, is there a requirement, or are we forcing the issue just to make sure that we've got a woman who's there?
I think, that's the danger. If you get, say, a defence minister or somebody who wants to see the first woman in the SAS and they change the standards of selection, that's dangerous, because you're not doing the system any good, and you're actually not doing her any good, because she'd never be able to live with it, because the guys would see if you're changing. And we've all seen in the past where you get, an MP sticking his nose into the military and tweaking a process that shouldn't be, changed. I would say that is a danger.
I agree. I sort of changed my opinion in the last few years. I'm of the, I think it's going to go that way anyway. I think it's absolutely fine to end up, the administration side of things, the UK sort of camp life side of things aside, and the cost that's going to be incurred to accommodate females, if you talk about integrating them into what are currently all male units, because you're going to go from all male oriented toilets, just toilets for example, to now it's unisex. Well, just implementing those built-in changes are going to cost a bomb, right? But that aside, I think if standards stay the same, because the standards are set because that's what battle dictates, that's what war dictates, that's what missions dictate, operational environment dictates, right? Well, you're absolutely right. If they start lowering those to accommodate females because you want to meet a fucking quota, then it's bullshit. But let's say that they don't change the standards you need to meet to be able to go into the paras, go into the guards, go into the whoever the rifles, whoever.
Not that I know much about the paras, the guards, the Royal Marines, or that sort of thing, other than bits and pieces that I've seen on YouTube. But and same again with the SAS. Although I know a little bit more from the New Zealand Australian viewpoint, I think as long as, and I don't know what Hugh's about to say, but I think as long as the standards stay the same, that it's one standard, whether you're a male or a female, if you're wanting to go into that combat role, if you're wanting to go into a parachute regiment or the Royal Marines or the Guards or the SAS or SBS or whatever, here's the one standard that has been set in place for however many years, decades. If you want to join this unit and be a part of this unit, this combat fighting unit, then you need to meet these standards as a minimum, regardless of who you are. And I think if females that want to do that role and they meet those standards, then fair play to them. Just, crack on. But I think there may still be some, I don't know if tension is the right word. There'd still be something, I don't know, I can't explain it properly, but there's something in my gut that says I don't know how well that would go. I'd love to be proved wrong, in terms of, and what I mean by that is in terms of there being nothing wrong, and that it was just a feeling that I had which was unwarranted and unfounded, and it turns out to be complete rubbish. But for whatever reason, I just can't help but think that there might still be some, we don't know what we don't know, that there may be some issues that pop up. But at this current state, if they meet that one standard, that same standard that's there for everyone, regardless of their sex or gender, then more power to them, fair play to them.
Having a woman as part of, let's say you've got a woman in the SAS as part of your patrol. Or Batman Unit 3 power as part of the section of the troop. Oh, troop power of yourself, sorry. See that as an issue? Can you imagine putting yourself through it, see an issue on the ground?
I honestly think is what is the requirement for that person to be there? Or what are they doing? What are they bringing to the party that another male that isn't Are they bringing? Have they met the standard, and can they carry the kit and ensure they can do everything they need to do? If they can do, then fair play. But if they can't, we just put them there purely politically or to get a route at another, another promotion. Then that's just ridiculous. That's obviously going to be a hindrance and an issue on the people assuming.
And also, it depends on the theatre where you're operating, because again, there is certain areas and different roles where you want females.
Absolutely.
Next to you, but they don't have to be badged. They just need to be, in my day it was the debt to be in that unit and whatever. But no, it's in the 80s, there was a CO decided we were under strength, and he made a decision. Anybody past the hills phase would automatically pass the jungle. There was no failures in the jungle.
That's nuts. A former CEO of 22 SAS, who I think he said in the 80s here, I think that's what Chris Ryan just mentioned, sometime in the 80s, come back as a CEO, sounds like, and decides anybody who passes the hills phase is going to pass the jungle phase, or is going to go on and should be badged. That's the UK selection is obviously very different to Australia and New Zealand in terms of that 6-month process is their all-encompassing selection. NZ in Australia, so obviously a 5-day pre-selection plus a 10-day testing is just the selection piece for NZ, thereabouts, and then a 9 to 10 month or maybe a 10 to 12 month cycle of training. So that's still considered part of a selection because you still have to pass all the courses well in order to progress to the next course and ultimately receive your beret at the end. Australia is similar, a 3-week selection process followed by a 10 to 18 month or 12 to 18 month cycle of training, where similar to NZ, you go through all those courses. You have to pass each one well before you can progress, etc. And even then, there's still no guarantee. You can be removed at any time during the cycle of training, during selection, during the cycle of training. You can be removed once you get to the unit, to your squadron, to your troop, if you're not meeting the standards. So there's lots of similarities in that regard. But with regards to what Chris has just mentioned, a CEO thinking that's nuts, because that CEO surely has done selection. You have to have done the selection, and they would have done the officer testing portion of the selection and that as well. To sit back and go, person passes their hills phase, which goes for several weeks, from what I understand, 4 or 5 weeks, that they'll get through everything else. That's the wrong call, in my opinion, anyway.
Now, again, this is where you get interference from above. I believe the most important part of SAS selection is the jungle.
Absolutely.
Because you've got the guys, they've shown they've got the fitness, that's it. It's now, can they carry a weapon? Can they think, on their feet? Can they see things? All the basic shit. What
is your health and safety to get to the trees? It's to show you're fit enough to work in the trees.
And on this particular...
Wow. I'm going to pause this there because this is nearly 30 minutes, and this is actually one of the questions for this reaction. So, question 1, 22 SA selection jungle phase. Chris says, and the other X22 operator Ben Garwood agrees, the jungle phase is the most important one of 22 SA selection. So here's got here, what's the most important part of the Oz/NZSA selection in your view? And would the Australian New Zealand SAS training be better if you guys had a jungle phase in your cycle? Interesting. So I'll say this first, just working backwards. There is we call it the patrol procedures, which would be the equivalent to the UK's jungle phase. Although, from my understanding, the UK guys, they'll fly over to Brunei and, get into some real thick, awesome jungle over there. Australia's got some good jungle for the patrol procedures. NZ, Australia, you've got that wildlife and stuff aspect as well, and the snakes and all that sort of thing to consider. The guys in 22, I think when they go to Brunei and other parts, they've got a whole bunch of wildlife and reptiles and snakes included in that. So a very hearty jungle phase from what I understand. But jungle's jungle, patrol procedures, in my opinion. NZ doesn't have that sort of wildlife and those types of hazards in there. But there is our equivalent, New Zealand and Australia's equivalent to answer your that last part of your question, there is a jungle phase, which is done during the cycle. So that goes for several weeks, the patrol procedures with a whole bunch of instruction, learning, patrols that you go out and do and come back and debriefings and getting into that rhythm of how things are done. All your contacts, all your weapon handling, everything's covered in there. And then it culminates in your final test and patrol and putting everything together, CTRs or close target reconnaissance, etc., getting all the information, etc., etc. So there is that part in NZ and Australia. Your first part of the question, though, saying asking what's the most important part of the Oz/NZSA selection in your view. I've just spoken about like the selections are quite different to the UK, but if I combine Australia, New Zealand selection with the cycle, to me, every aspect is important. Nothing's more, in my opinion, nothing's more important than the other. They're all connected, and you have to be able to get through each one. So the selection aspects I've spoken about are quite different. The UK, that 6-month process is the whole selection for the UK SF, from my understanding. NZ, I've spoken about the timeframes for the actual selection portions, and then the phase 2 of the cycle, and then, going on to a squadron if you get badged. In the cycle is where the patrol procedures course happens, or the jungle phase, whatever you want to call it. But included in that aspect and element and critical parts of the training is the counter-terrorism, is the demolitions, is the parachuting, is the method of entry, is the hand-to-hand combat, is the medics, is the SIGS course, is your insertion skill, if you're water, free fall, or vehicle mounted, or mountain troop. Like there's a massive amount of training and courses that you have to pass well. Like they're all important. There's the weapons, there's the shooting aspects, there's the validations and the ability to be able to hit the targets within the timeframes at the set distances, under stress, under pressure, day, night, dark room, under NVGs, use of iron sights, gas mask on, your body armor, sledgehammer swinging off, shotgun hanging off you, sidearm, a whole bunch of kit, live charges ready to go. Like there's just, everything's important. All of it. So in my view, there isn't one that's more important than the other. I know that there is a lot personally made, or not personally, I know that there's a lot made of UK's jungle phase, and that's been around and that's been like that. Even when I was going through the cycle in NZ, I'd heard about people, former badged NZ operators that had been removed off the UK selection during the jungle phase because whatever reason they weren't meeting the standard. I've not heard of a lot of ex-Kiwi badge members that got removed from the jungle phase. I've not, there may be, I don't know how many there are, but that have been removed from it. But from my understanding, there wasn't a lot of people that were removed from the jungle phase, but there have been some that have failed the UK SF jungle phase of their selection. Whatever those reasons are, I don't know what they are. But my opinion to the first part of your question, every single part of the selection / cycle for Australia and New Zealand is important, is critical. Because if you don't pass one, you don't get to progress. You don't jump out of an airplane, well, then you don't progress. You don't complete all the landings in the jump course with your clean fatigue, with your pack and all your kit and equipment by day and night, or the water jumps, well, then you don't pass. You don't get to progress. So that was the first course on the NZ cycle. If you didn't get through that, you didn't progress to the next one. So that's critical. And then so on and so forth. Every course that you do, in my opinion, is critical to passing selection / cycle and being badged and being an operator in the unit. So that's my take on that anyway. I'll pause this one here and I'll come back to this one later on, do another reaction another day and upload this one. But hopefully that helps answer your first question so far with regards to this particular reaction, which I'm really enjoying. So anyway, if you made it this far, thank you for your time and support as always. And with that, the message is the same. Regardless of any difficulties, hardships, dark times, challenges that you may be going through or somebody that you know, I genuinely and sincerely encourage you to keep turning up, keep staying in the fight, keep putting one foot in front of the other and take one day at a time. I know it can be miserable, lonely. I know it can suck and feel heavy at this time. I know it can feel like it's not worth it, but I promise you it's always worth it. Things can do and will get better if you want them to, but you do really have to want them to get better. And then you have to be willing to try. Sometimes you have to be willing to be consistent, disciplined, persistent. Sometimes you got to be prepared to be patient and just endure the suffering and the suck that you may be in at this time, but I promise you it will not last forever. There are better days ahead, and those better days are closer than you think. There is a light at the end of that tunnel, so just stick at it. As always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there's a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.